Thanks everyone for joining another exciting AFBE event. My name is Samuel. We do have a fantastic guest today. And first and foremost, before we start the event, for everyone that haven't seen us since the last event we had late last year around November, I'd like to say Happy New Year, even though it's March. Uh, just to go through the agenda of today's event, we are currently doing the introduction. Emeka will do a presentation for the next 40 minutes, and we'll give everyone a chance to get involved in a Q&A session. Just to basically brief people on what AFBE do, we basically are focused on representation within the engineering industry through different variety of events. We do have partnership with different industrial experts. We have multiple industries that do sponsor us, recruitment, and we do get a lot of companies reaching out to us for recruitment. Education, we have two main events, which is Making Engineering Hot, and also the transition event, which is a mock assessment center setting. We have networking event we do. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to have one since the COVID started, a physical one, should I say. And then we do have consultancy and research as well. Some of our industrial partners, trust me, this is not all of them. This is just some of them. So we do work with a range of industrial partners from consultancy firms to institutions to, even the big Formula One team, which is one of the things I was really excited about last year when they jumped on board. So today's event, some of you might be thinking, Eat the Frog, as AFB joined forces with Channel 4 to have a Come Down With Me event. But no, it's basically an event about the dangers of procrastination in furthering your career. And yeah, before we get into the guest, I would just like everyone using the share button. Actually, before we get into that, I'd like to make a brief confession. Since March last year, during COVID, when COVID started, I did put on a lot of weight, and I'm quite excited that the Prime Minister has actually informed everyone that, starting from April, we could get back into fitness, and I'm looking forward to going back to the gym and burning off some fat. So basically, using the chat button, the chat section, I would like everyone to basically just say one or two things you're really looking forward to once lockdown is taken off. I could definitely relate to meeting over the barber. I became a barber myself, actually. I bought myself a nice clip on eBay, and I got myself a nice fade. If anyone wants to get involved, I'm charging a little fee. I'll do the apply some COVID discounts as well. So yeah, definitely message me and let me give you the haircut. So yeah, just to get cracking, move on to the guest today. We've got the fantastic Emeka. Emeka is a technical director with WSP, and I'll be giving Emeka control to basically share his screen and get into the presentation.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be back. Thanks to AFBE UK. It's just amazing seeing what AFBE has been doing over the past few years. And yeah, you mentioned the affiliation with Lewis Hamilton. That was really exciting to see. And you're seeing one of the founding members getting an MBE as well. Again, that's something great, as you can see how the development of the organization has been going. It's great to be part of it, great to come back and present. So yeah, what is this about, Eating the Frog? Basically, this is thinking about your engineering career, and when you procrastinate, taking too much time, not focusing on your career, how that can end up being detrimental to your career. And then effectively, career, developing yourself within your career it's not easy. It's a challenging thing. Most people would rather be watching TV, rather be playing sport, going to the gym, cutting hair, whatever it is, than working on taking that next step in your career. So this is about highlighting the dangers, what you need to look for in terms of the signs, and also how to overcome them as well. So yeah, let's go for it. So a little bit about me. Kind of tell you about where I've been, kind of what I've done. So a little profile picture of me there trying to be Brunel. Hopefully people recognize that photo of Brunel. If you don't, you're not an engineer. So yeah, I studied electrical engineering, then went on to do a master's in sustainable electrical systems. I have become a chartered engineer through the IET, but also moving more into project management now, doing more stuff with the APM, and also now a chartered member of the APM as well. So it's still within WSP. I do engineering lead to project manager to design manager, managing programs, basically solving problems, trying to think through anything that needs to be resolved. And lots of times I've had clients just basically call me up and say, hey, we need help, or hey, have you got an idea of how we can do this? And a lot of the time it's an engineering solution they're looking for. So a bit of my background, doing A-levels, went to Brunel University, hence the link with Isenbark and Brunel, and then Manchester University. And one of the things that I found as well in terms of career is I did my master's while working. So it was, some people on my degree went straight from the bachelor's into the master's. I found that I was able to bring more practical aspects of work into the master's, and it actually made more sense what I was studying as I was able to apply it practically to work. And I was working on the project Terminal 5 at the time. In terms of companies, my resume, so I did an undergraduate placement with WS Atkins, which is now Atkins Global, as most people know them. Then I moved to, also did another placement actually with Balfour Kilpatrick, as they're known at the time, now called Balfour BT Kilpatrick. And they took me on after university. So thankfully, I actually never had an interview until 2008 for a job, because I knew somebody who worked at Atkins, got a placement, then just emailed some people, managed to get a placement at Balfour BT. And the day I was supposed to go for an interview at Balfour Kilpatrick, they were interviewing somebody else and took 2 hours and just kept me waiting for 2 hours. So they then offered me a job then, and also offered me a job after I finished uni, which was great. So Balfour BT was a contractor, and working with them for a while, I thought, okay, I wanted to get chartered as an engineer, but working for a contractor, you're very much working on delivery. And everything you're doing in the thought process is about, we already know what we're trying to do. How do we get it in there? So imagine just trying to, put a square peg in a round hole. You're looking at the square peg and you're saying, okay, we just need to chisel it around and put it in and get it sorted. Doesn't matter how it looks, let's just get it done. But I was finding that in terms of using my degree and using the engineering know-how, I wasn't really able to, I guess, when you looked at the competencies for engineering, wasn't able to really get into sort of the competencies for chartership, sorry. I wasn't really able to tick a lot of the boxes in terms of the depth of my knowledge and the practical aspects I was using from my knowledge. So I moved on to a consultant engineering company called DSSR, worked there for 2.5 years, was able to meet the requirements through the project work that I did there, got chartered, then moved to Pastors Brinkhoff, which is now WSP, and I've been there for 10, coming 11 years now. And my career has gone from being electrical engineer to, now do project and program management and lots of engineering projects. So the question I always ask in these are, if you had to eat a frog at the beginning of the day, if you had to eat a frog every day, would you eat it at the beginning of the day or the end of the day? So if you had something very difficult to do, would you do it at the beginning of the day or the end of the day? And this comes from a book written by, I forget the guy's name now, but it talks about if you've got something tough to do, doing it at the beginning of the day is the best thing to do, rather than waiting and keeping yourself sort of worried and anxious about getting it done towards the end of the day. So do the toughest things first. And why I've used it for this presentation is to say that working and focusing on your career and progressing your career, it is a challenge, it is tough. But it's one of the things that that you have to prioritize. Otherwise, there are dangers and you will find that you're not going anywhere in your career. So the dangers then. A couple of things, easy to say, ending up where you don't want to be, or worse, where you shouldn't be. So there's times you can end up missing the boat, for instance, where opportunities come up and you're not ready for them. Also, just not having your eyes open, not even looking for them. So you end up missing that boat. Then there's the aspects of playing catch up. I found people in their careers, and I always use the example of a guy that we knew called Finn. When he started off his business, he wanted to do like import export and used to kind of import cars, import different things. Then he went, that seemed to be where the money was, but he was always behind the curve effectively. And then when he couldn't do that, he went into used car sales, because a lot of people were flipping cars at the time, making a lot of money in the 90s. And then he was behind the curve on that again. Then the internet boom was coming up. So he thought, right, jump in, internet cafe. By then, people started getting the smartphones, very early smartphones, where you could get WAP, the web access protocol on the phones, but people were still happy with those. And then people started getting internet at home. So again, that died a death. So he went on to doing IT software, to property development, to precious stones, but he was always behind the curve. And the thing was, when you sort of look back at it, and the story he always tells us now is that he never did his research and he never planned. He just saw something that he thought was good and he just jumped into it. So if he had planned in terms of a career and where he wanted to go, he would be able to make those decisions at the right time to go into the right thing and not go into other things. So you don't want to be playing catch up in your career. You know, have focus, make sure you know where you're going. The other thing is being demotivated as well. So I have a lot of people who I've worked with who've been sitting in the company for years and they're just demotivated in what they're doing. They're not happy. And they're always looking at greener grass elsewhere. And some of them actually end up obviously they're standing still where they are, but some of them actually end up moving because they just want to move for money, but then they end up still unhappy and they find that their careers are not really moving. So these are some of the dangers, the key ones to sort of look out for and to watch, look out for, watch out for, and ensure that you're not missing the boat. Make sure that, you're not playing catch up on things, and also be aware of being demotivated by looking outside and elsewhere and seeing things that seem to be greener grass. So then, how to eat the frog. So there's a famous statement: when it comes to your career, never put off until tomorrow what you can do today. And that applies almost everywhere. If there's something that you need to do, if you can do it today, get it done today. And the first thing I always say to people is, whose career is it? It is yours, and you need to prioritize it. A lot of people think, I've got a good line manager, or I'm working in a good company, they have a good, graduate program, etc. I say no, because it's great, it's fantastic to have all of that. But at the end of the day, if you're relying on somebody else, they're going to let you down. So you need to prioritize it, take responsibility for it. Ask yourself the question, what's that next step I want to take? What's stopping me? Where do I want to go in my career? Am I in the right direction? How do I take my first step? And then ask yourself, what am I waiting for? And I understand there's certain times where you might want to sit in and understand a bit more about what you're doing. There's a bit of learning to do. So it's not about moving fast. It's about moving in the right direction. Okay. I had an opportunity actually when I came out of university. Normally you do 4 years before you can apply for chartership. But because my degree was accredited by the IET, I got a letter after 2 years, or even 18 months actually after graduating from the IET, asking me to apply for chartership. And I thought, okay, this is fantastic. But then again, looking at it, as I said, looking at the criteria, I was thinking, I didn't even feel in myself that I was ready yet. But then I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to get myself into a company. And that's when I moved into a company where I could get the experience and actually really hone my skills to the point of where I was confident when I went in for the interview for chartership. It was just like, okay, I already knew that I was going to get through, which was great. So yeah, other hints and tips, I'd say, has anybody got a mobile phone with them near them? Right, pick it up now. Great, go to your calendar. Go to what's the first Thursday of every month? So that was last week. Let's go to the first Thursday of next month. What date's the first Thursday of next month? That would be, April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not meant to be a pun. But the first Thursday of every month, 10 o'clock, put that in as a recurring appointment, 1 hour. And that is your time for looking after your career. I've got that in my calendar every month, first Thursday, 10 till 11. I'm always doing some professional development or technical development. Sometimes it's just going on the IET website, looking at some stuff, looking at what's next, being chartered for a while, looking possibly fellowship within either the IET or the APM, reading articles, get some CPD in there, just looking at what could your next direction be. And I do that as well. So I would say get that in and make sure that's something you do. And if I do meet any of you, I'm going to check your calendar and make sure it's in there. No other meetings apart from that on that time. Okay, getting a mentor. Sounds like something that everybody kind of should do and should know about, but not a lot of people do. And, you know, there can be an aspect of it where I think when I was very young in terms of my career, I felt that I could do anything, I knew everything, I didn't need anybody. And if I needed somebody, I could go and ask questions. But I got a mentor very early on. And the company just got, this was in Balfour when I was working for Balfour BT. They got me a mentor within the company, a senior PM. And it was very useful having those conversations about career, about aspirations, also recommendations on different things that he thought would be good for me to go into. And it had been, it was a great help over my career. It got to a point where we were working opposite each other eventually, and he could see that I had come leaps and bounds from where I was years ago when he was mentoring me. And again, even now within the business, I have people that are my go-to people. It's not necessarily like a formal mentoring sort of relationship, but somebody I know I can go to and ask questions when I'm getting stuck in career things or need to bounce some ideas off people about direction. I can go to them, book some time in with them, and do it on a regular basis. So that's definitely something that will be good for you, challenge you, and help you. Then CPD, continuous professional development. As I always say to people, it's a given. You should be doing this anyway. You can get any engineering institute you're affiliated with, go to their events website, part of their website, and there'll be so many things you can sign up for, and just continue to sign up for them. Stick one of them in once a month, at least, to ensure you're doing something. But also, again, I mentioned reading, just reading on the latest technology. And most of you probably get those emails from the IET, ENT news as well that comes through the inbox. There's some really interesting stuff that comes in there where you just find out about technology and stuff that's happening. And most institutions do that. So definitely get on that. And then your goal setting, your 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. When I joined this company, I said, okay, I was going to do 10 years and I'm in my 10th year now. So is it like, well, am I going to leave? It's like, well, no, I set a goal and said, okay, there's a certain place I wanted to get to and certain things I wanted to achieve. And it's then looking at it and reassessing it. Okay, I've got to 10 years. Have I achieved everything? Or what's the next step? Is that next step going to be within the company or outside the company? So then think big and start small. So one of the things that also people do is like making those little steps. Okay, I'm going to aim for chartership. Okay, I'm only just going to work on that. So, no, I'm going to aim for chartership. I'm going to aim to do this. Make it big. And by thinking big and making those big plans, affiliate yourself with those professional institutions. That's one way you can actually aim higher. So if someone's aiming for chartership, what about fellowship with the institution? What are they looking for in a fellow? What other things can you be getting involved in? Could you set up a network? Could you be running a network? Could you be running events, etc.? So think big, but start small. And again, also writing your resignation. People find this one funny, but definitely don't quit. Don't hand it in. First day on the job, write your resignation, hand it in. No. But why I tell people to do that is, what would you want to say to your company when you were leaving? If you've done everything that you felt that you wanted to do in your career, and you've got to a certain point where you think, okay, my next big step, or my next step as I'm thinking big, has got to be bigger than where this company can take me. How would you write to your manager? Thank you very much for all the help and everything that this company has done for me. It's been fantastic. This is an opportunity for me to leave now and, allow space for other people within the company to grow. Something like that, rather than I've been really annoyed, I haven't got this promotion, this hasn't happened for me, that hasn't happened for me, nobody's done this. You want to put it in a way where you are actually happy to go. And I think in some ways they're two, I guess it's almost like a good and a bad. Being asked to stay when you hand your notice in, and not being asked to stay when you hand your notice in. But even then, sometimes if you don't get asked to stay, sometimes it's because the company understands that you know where you're going and they're happy for you to go on. So that could also be a two-way street with respect to that. Okay, so the danger signs, these are things to look out for when you're looking at your career and when you feel potentially you might be in a stagnant position. So watching out for obstacles, and these could be people. So sometimes it could be the company you're in. You know, have they got a good setup? I mentioned about having a good graduate program, you know, training programs potentially. If there aren't those opportunities for you to actually develop yourself within that company, then that might be a sign that there are obstacles to your career development. Now, there's a distinction between your career development and your career progression. So it's career development is very, very different to your career progression. In terms of also people as well, understanding that sometimes there are people who would be obstacles to your career development. You know, they won't sign off training. You know, you want to take some time out to go to an event or to do certain things, and they won't let you go. I actually had an ex-colleague as well who was looking for opportunities to do further things and was showing that they were had that capability, and the management team were just like, oh well, you're good at this and we want you to do this, and so they kept them in that position, which is really unfair to them because they wanted to grow their wings and they just kept on getting clipped. And also for me, and earlier in my career as well, there's a time I wanted to go forward for a promotion, and I had aspirations to do other things in terms of my career development. And my line manager didn't put me forward, even though I had reached, you know, I was able to actually prove my competency and where I'd got to in my career to be able to go forward for that promotion. And because my line manager at the time didn't support my promotion, when I went to the panel, even though I did well through the panel, because I didn't have the support of my line manager, I didn't get through. And it was later on that I found out that my line manager at the time was actually going for promotion at the same time. So they actually wanted to ensure that they got to the next level first before I got up to the same level as them. So again, this was a clear warning sign to me about putting my career in other people's hands and my career development in other people's hands, because you don't know what other people's agendas are. So you got to be very careful about that. Then you have what I call the false prophets. So the wolves in sheep's clothing. So sometimes you get those people who come into business, yeah, I'll take you on, I'll come work with me, this, that, the other. They're kind of up and about, running around, they pull you into the exciting stuff. And, you know, you're almost like in awe, like, oh, wow, you know, you end up following them. Then all of a sudden they're off. They're like, oh, right, yeah, great, I'm leaving the company. It's like, oh, okay. And you've completely ignored your career development because you've almost started just following somebody who's new, shiny, and seems to have it all together. So that can be very dangerous as well, and it's important to watch out for those people. Sometimes they're good in terms of they could get you in the right opportunities and get you in the right spaces and open things up to you, but you've got to ensure that you're not putting your career in their hands, and make sure you're not ignoring your career while you're doing that. So again, weak or poor management is another thing. So again, I've experienced this in my career as well, where you have managers who are not interested really at all in developing you. And this is something that some companies have recognized actually more recently, is not everybody should be a line manager. You know, there's some people who it's just not their bag. They're not people, not a people person, or they're not even interested in doing that people development. And so you need to ensure that if you're with a weak or poor manager, it's important to get a mentor, somebody who can help you out of that situation. Another danger sign is if you're in a company, or even yourself, you haven't got a sort of structured development plan or development reviews. Now, if it's in a company, I think that's even more dangerous. If they're just having people who sort of working, you might as well be working in a factory, you know, making bumpers or, you know, or shoelaces, because there's no progression from there, except to perhaps be the person at the end of the line watching. So from that perspective, if there isn't any formal structure for you, that's a danger. Try and get one in place. Try and work out a way of getting one in place, either with the company or just yourself with your line manager, and have those regular reviews. So again, boredom. Some people are just bored in their jobs. And if you're bored, that's a sign that you're pretty much going over the edge, unfortunately. So look out for that. It's a really easy sign. And, you know, I've been in positions where I was completely bored with what I was doing. I do remember, and one of my line managers actually will tell me, because I was working, and so it was a project manager on a project I was working on. I was working under a line manager who was very much like cards close to his chest, didn't want to share anything with anybody. And so even though I was the graduate and he was the senior engineer, he was supposed to be kind of teaching me stuff and supporting me, he just carried on doing what he was doing. And he might chuck me some stuff, oh, check this. And I'd spend like a whole day going through some calcs to find out he's already submitted it for, you know, for approval without even looking at the calcs that I've done. So just wasting my time. So at the time I used to then, you know, free phone at work. I was on the phone to my uni friends and chatting for half of the day, etc. And it got to a point where I was just bored. You know, I had nothing really to do at work. And one of my senior managers noticed. And I remember him that day, he just called me into the corridor and said, hey, you know, what's going on here? You know, every time I see you, you're on the phone. Every time I come over to your desk, you're on the phone. What's going on? And I just said, okay, yeah, you know, my bad. I'm going to cut it out. And it was almost like from that day, sort of things changed, because then opportunity came in for me to do a big presentation to the client for the whole project. So I got involved in that. Then my line manager, the guy who didn't share anything, eventually left the company. And so everything sort of fell on my shoulders and I picked it up. And I remember that manager who came to talk to me about being on the phone, came over to me another time and he said, you're like a different person. And even now, like if I see him now, he would say to me, it's like, I remember that conversation in the corridor about the phone and how you're completely different. But imagine if I had been like, oh, whatever, you know, I had a bad attitude to that. Or even if I didn't have, you know, a senior manager there who cared enough to basically say to me like, look, you can't be sitting there on the phone, even if you're bored. Where would I be today? You know what I mean? I kind of think I would have just sat there, been bored, done nothing, then maybe left the company and gone somewhere else and to do something else. So again, another sign I think is peers, you know, looking at your peers from education in other organizations. And sometimes it's not necessarily the best thing to compare yourself to others, but it can be a good benchmark. I wouldn't say directly compare yourself and look at certain individuals, because one, you don't know their situation, you don't know the company that they're in, can be very different from yours. But if you are, for instance, 4 years out of university or 5 years out of university, one of your university classmates is already a chartered engineer and is working as a senior engineer, and you're still rocking a graduate title at work, something's going wrong there. So that's where I say, you know, in terms of looking at your peers, kind of gauge yourself and where you should be. You shouldn't necessarily be exactly the same as them. You shouldn't necessarily be like, you know, light years ahead of them or anything. I mean, if you are, that's great. You know, that's good for you. Pat yourself on the back. Things are going well. But use that as almost a benchmark for yourself to ensure that you're actually, you know, doing the right things and should be in the right position. Okay, so how do you overcome these things? Kind of what I've said before about reprioritizing your career. When you find yourself in any of these positions, boredom, find you're behind your peers, you have no sense of direction at work, you know, poor line management, etc. It's a time for you to sort of turn around and say, right, I'm reprioritizing my career. I need to look at it and say, this is mine. It's important that I take care of it. Start again, pretty much repunch the clock and start again. And I mentioned that plan, the 1, 5, and 10-year plan. Now, it becomes even more important at this stage now to say, right, okay, I've wasted time or I'm too far behind. What's my first step? I'm mature enough to make a big first step. I want to do 1 year. Let's start 1 year. Where do I want to be in 5 years? And start planning that track. Use certain things, getting the mentors in place, making sure that these people they will help you sort of pull yourself in direction. You know, confess to your mentor, you know, I haven't been doing what I should be doing. You know, I've let things slide, which is not right. So I need some help to kind of take myself forward. Then there's a book that I've read actually called The Art of the Start by a guy called Guy Kawasaki. And it's about starting a business and people who, when they start businesses, a lot of them think, okay, before I start this business, I have to sit down, I have to have the 20-point plan, I have to have, my business case, 200-page business case with financial model all done, my projections for the next 5 years with revenue, etc. And he says, no, just get out there and start doing what you need to do. Wherever you need to actually get done at a certain time when it's important and it's something you need to prioritize, you will prioritize it. And I've had cases where, say even things like when you're doing a presentation for work, when you have, a deadline that you need to meet, if you're going at it and saying, oh, I need to plan it properly, I need to have a proper program, etc., to get it done, you'll end up either not doing your best. I mean, some people work well that way, but I think that over planning something sometimes means that you don't actually get started properly. And that's the point that he's making, that people can take a long time trying to plan something and not actually get started. So I'd say in terms of furthering your career, get out there, network with people. AFBE is a great organization. Get onto events, network, get to know people. And don't do it in a creepy way, because that's a bit wrong. You start getting people avoiding you. But in terms of that networking, that gives you the opportunity to meet people who could actually help you with that next step. When I talk about mentors, a lot of times people think about mentors as people who are much older than them, who are wise and long in tooth, old in years. Not necessarily. Mentors could be people who are your peers. Peer-to-peer mentoring is great. Get in groups. I'm sure people here are on WhatsApp groups all the time. And the WhatsApp groups I'm on one with my mates from basketball that I played basketball with at university. In terms of trying to get any career advice or anything sensible out of that group, good luck. It's never going to happen. So, but then I have another group of guys who you could bounce some ideas off people. Great sense of guys who have career aspirations, who are making sure it's not jokes sent around every 5 minutes. It's about, oh, what about this? What have I invested on this? Or how do I do this? And we've networked with people. I've linked them up with people I know, and they're linking me up with people they know to get involved with different parts of business and things like that. So that's again, that important thing about networking. Make sure it all works for you. So look at your career at the moment. Where do you think it is? Make that assessment. Do you need to get back on track? Is it a case of a couple of tweaks here and there? Use some of the things that I've talked about. I mentioned about writing your resignation letter. What would that sound like now? And what would it sound like once you've got yourself back on track? Where you're going. Those are the sort of things that you need to look out for in terms of the danger signs as well that I mentioned. Boredom, no direction, focusing yourself back in and trying to get your career back on track. So the question is not about, are you going to eat that frog? It's how are you going to eat that frog now? Okay, so first thing tomorrow morning. Actually, there's no time like today. Why would we put it off till tomorrow? Yeah, after this, sketch up a plan. What's my next step going to look like in my career? Okay, how are you going to make that next step? Who do you need to link with? Are there any organizations you need to link with? In terms of your internet page, again, that's another thing that I have. If I open up Google Chrome on my laptop, 2 web pages that pop up, the APM web page, APM News for Association of Project Management, and the IET News and Events page as well. So it's not just Sky News or MSN stuff that pops up. Again, that's just a way of feeding yourself with stuff that's great for your career development. Easy, quick win ways of doing things like that. Okay, and that's me. Any questions? Yeah.
Wow, that was a fantastic presentation. I would like to kick off the question bit though. Yeah. Growing up, I've always seen myself as someone that's really ambitious, and one of the things that social media has done these days is, like you said, you see what your friends are doing. How are you able to differentiate between instant gratification and being ambitious?
No, it's a good question. Good question. I guess from the perspective of is understanding yourself. I think that's first and foremost. Understand yourself and stick to your career aspirations and goals. Because again, one thing with social media these days is, and I think the whole was it the Instagram kind of culture with all the filters, etc. People will always filter and show you what they want to see. Same thing with looking on LinkedIn. The amount of people who want to put a director job title in their title, they're not director. Director of staplers and paper towels, but director, yeah, on the thing. So it's also understanding you've got to be confident in yourself, and that's why it's important to be focused on your career and your direction that you want to go to. It's good to have aspirations, and when I said about looking at others in your career, you know, and where other people are, it's not about being jealous and trying to be like somebody. It's kind of just trying to gauge yourself in terms of, did I have the same sort of aspirations as that individual when we were at university? Were we sort of level mindset type people? If they are chartered now and I'm not, what am I not doing right? You know, it's a decent benchmark, but don't look at it like that person's, you know, a director and I'm not a director, because if you're in two completely different industries, even two completely different companies, it could mean something completely different. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. Yeah, I'll open the floor for everyone. Anyone that wants to ask a question, could you just kindly unmute themselves and ask away? I think you blew everyone away. Everyone's just getting go on.
Hello, Emeka.
Hey,
My name is Elegbede. I'm a student at the University of Bath. I do chemical engineering. First of all, I'd like to thank you for a good presentation. You know, even as someone who considers themselves to be ambitious and on the ball, I always need some motivation to not procrastinate. So my question would be for me, I'm a university student, and your plan, you said to plan for 1 year, 5 year, and 10 years. But I see from my perspective, obviously, I would like your insight on this also. But I see that the industry and life changes very quickly, and scenes can change very quickly. So how would I, as a university student, plan like 10 years ahead? Even 1 year, I could kind of plan for it. 5 years, maybe, but 10 years seems a bit far from me. So do you think I should concentrate on the 1 to 5, or I'd like to get your take on that?
Yeah, sure. No, again, great question. Great question. I hope your degree is going well as well within this pandemic. Yeah. So one of the things that you say, in terms of time, and how do you plan the time? This is where I talk about the different steps that you're taking. So it's all about thinking big, but you plan small. So if you're kind of saying, okay, in 10 years time, I mean, how long have you got left on your degree course?
I tend to do a 5 years with the work placement, so I think I've got 3 years left. That's why I graduate.
Yeah. Okay, so you will graduate in 3 years. So then 7 years into your career. So it would say 4 years into that, you want to be getting chartered. So 3 years after that, where do you want to be? So it's thinking big, but you've got to plan those small steps. So yeah, I think it's up to you. How big do you want to think? Do you want to be running a company? Do you want to be a CEO? Yeah, be ambitious. You know, be as ambitious as you want. And there's no reason why you couldn't be doing that at that age. Yeah, the size of the company might, be something that would be a limiter, but because of your experience. But there's no reason why you couldn't get there. But if you're making those plans and you're making them as small steps that you're going to take, that makes sense, and have direction that's actually going to be sort of, I suppose, give you some tangible results as you're making that direction, then just keep planning. So yeah, 10 years is not too long to planning ahead if you break it down in those steps, as I said.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Jamani Camaro. I'm a graduate engineer, structural engineer at the moment. I just wanted to follow on from the last question. In terms of kind of reporting the small steps for yourself, and knowing when to actually changing not your goals as such, but maybe your approach to how you're going to reach your goals, or kind of sticking with it to see how things are actually changing. How do you kind of differentiate between the two? Because sometimes maybe you've just not done it for long enough, or maybe you do just need to change the approach in what you're doing. I wondered what you'd recommend in seeing those small steps.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, again, a great question as well. And you almost kind of answered the question yourself in terms of, what is causing you to think that you perhaps need to change direction. And perhaps this kind of happened to me actually very early on in my career. Actually, when I moved from the contractor to a consultant, I was going down, so they had like two routes within their company. They're like, you could be a design manager or you could be a project manager. And they're two completely different roles. And they were kind of putting me down. So you do a project engineer role, and then you go into the project manager. But I wanted to get more involved in the design, the technical aspects, and stick with the design management route. But I felt that I didn't need to kind of separate too early, that I could carry on doing both for a little while and then separate. So it's almost, thinking about it from a career perspective on what you want to do. So changing direction, you want to be looking at it from the perspective of, have you got as much as you want to get from the position that you're in? So if you're starting, a job and they've given you a certain task to do, most companies will give you as part of your graduate program a certain task, and they say, okay, 6-month placement in this, and then you move on to that and move on to that. The expectation of what you're meant to get out of that time is what they want you to get in terms of experience and build your capability. So look at it from your perspective and say to yourself, when I get to this position, and if you're planning it, so when I get to this position, I want to be able to have achieved this or be able to be more competent in this. And then if you're making a decision, you can change it either time and whenever you want to, but it's all about making sure that you've got as much as you want out of that position you're in relation to your overall career goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Just before the next question, I've got a question actually. I remember watching a TED talk once by Simon Sinek, and he said there's a way to measure performance in the industry, but there isn't actually a way of measuring trust. And you mentioned something about, for example, working with someone that doesn't want to share work, for example. How can the industry move forward? I know that's a typical personal human habit, but how can we create a more less toxic environment within the working place? Because with performance, you could do PDRs and stuff to measure how someone is performing. But how can we eliminate those toxic traits out of people in the industry?
Yeah. Again, another good question. And I think I hate to say it, the answer is social media. and that's one of the things that you find, that a lot of people who are trying to do this with the knowledge and stuff that they have, somebody else is out there putting it on blast. And one of the ways of potentially drawing people out of that is saying, well, how can we do a TED talk? How can we do, run a CPD, and it's calling people out. And some of it takes a bit of the sort of, I guess, is that kind of people skills and getting to a point where you're really understanding different characters and how to deal with different people in different situations. And there's several sort of free courses you can take on things like that. In how to deal with people, how to ask questions, be always the one asking the questions, how to turn questions around. In that way, you're almost like manipulating people in a good way to kind of help them come out of the shell. Because I don't think it's ever good for anybody to be like that, where they're just hoarding what they have, the knowledge, not sharing it with others. If they were to sort of advertise their knowledge and show that they knew a lot, people would gravitate towards them because of what they knew. And people would actually want to ask them more and more for advice and for help. So it would then be, I'd say the onus would be on us who are more conscious to then help draw them out of that position. And we can do that through something as simple as, like, I'm setting up a breakfast sort of networking thing. Would you like to come and speak on this? Now, all of a sudden, people open up.
Thanks very much. Any more questions? I'm sure people are probably being shy as well. Come out of that comfort zone and eat that frog.
Yeah.
Hi. I have a question. My name is Ayomide Ufong. And I work for ADF Energy as an electrical engineer. My question is more related to eating the frog later in the day. I think a lot of that we've discussed right now is, at the start of your career, 5-year, 10-year plan. But what happens to those people that have, I guess, aged in the industry and would like to take those steps, what would you advise them to do at this point? So yeah.
Okay. So question effective for somebody who is later in their career and is wanting to start developing their career at that later stage. Yeah. Okay. I would say it's exactly the same. Probably more for that individual, it might be a realization that they might have missed the boat, that they're lagging behind others, for instance, as well, or they're looking at greener grass outside and trying to think of how can I get there. So it's then just going through those same steps, prioritizing the career, whatever stage you're in your career, you can just reprioritize, reset, push the restart button, say, I'm going to prioritize it. Doing those same things, getting a mentor in the middle of your career, it's still fine. At any stage, get a mentor. And sometimes you might only get a mentor for a short period of time because you need some help to get to the next stage. And then that mentor then goes off and does something else. So I would say for people at that stage, it's exactly the same process. Go through, reprioritize, getting a mentor, getting those things back on track in terms of CPDs, getting that networking out there. And even more so, you probably find with the networking is you've got a lot more knowledge and experience that you have to share with others. So you might even find yourself being a mentor to somebody else as part of that networking to help bring others up. That help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hello there.
Hi. Can you see me clearly?
No, but you sounds on. Yeah, it sounds on.
Okay. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. My name is Esther Tao, and first of all, I'd like to thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
And you just made something resound in my mind, just as an addendum to what you just said to Upong. I attended a webinar yesterday. I'll be brief. Webinar yesterday on 400 Black interns. And one of the things that was said was be the CEO of your own career. Don't leave it to your employer. Okay. Because to be honest, they want to see you move. They want, if you're able to be the CEO of your own career, they'll see that you're productive and you'll be invested in more because they can see that drive in you for success, for excellence, for whatever it is you're putting your hands and your head to.
Yeah.
So, to be very honest, you just need to be the CEO of your life. You need to take the bull by the horns and push it through.
Yeah.
It's never going to be easy, but just do your best.
That's great.
Thanks very much. That was really good.
Yeah. Might have to use that next time.
I like that.
Actually, CEO.
CEO of your life. Something just popped into my head. When we first get into the industry, some of us might start in a let's say a more technical role. And one of the things that's easy to do is, and there's nothing bad in this, you progress in that technical role, and then 10, 15 years time, you're thinking of going into more leadership role. Now, I can imagine from an employer point of view, I would probably pull a grad that started in, let's say, a project manager role, who or she is basically advanced to the senior role, rather than someone that's just focused on a technical role only. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. How can someone that's developed in a technical role then switch to more of a leadership role later on in their career?
Yeah, exactly what I did. And I was completely technical as senior engineer. One of the things that I did very early on, which made it easy for me to switch to project management, is I went out and paid for my own Prince 2 project management course. So it was, just going out and getting that myself. It was an investment because it was me investing in my career. So when I moved over from the SSR, I was working to pass the brick off to WSP. And I started having conversations with people, said that I wanted to move into project management. There were other people who were engineers around me who were saying the same thing. They'd been saying for years that they wanted to be project managers, but I already had that project management qualification. So it was easy for them to look at it and say, right, okay, this guy can actually do it. And then just having the conversations, the opportunity came up and I was the first person they put forward. There was no question. So actually developing yourself in that direction. And yeah, as Esra was saying, it's sometimes how difficult it is it will cost you money. So you might have to go out and say, right, I'm going to try and spend some money, save up, spend some money, and do this particular course to help me get down this direction. But also there are lots of free courses out there, and the cost might be time. Rather than catching up in one division, you're basically focusing on doing a course in the evening, networking with people, going out meeting people, well, when you can, going out meeting people, and spending time doing that is actually then going to help you get yourself into that direction. So doing the things that you need to do to move yourself from the technical role into the management position.
Thanks very much, because I was one of my plan in the future is to do an MBA, which they want to charge 50 grand for. So I basically bought a 10-day MBA book, literally. And that's the cheap course I'm doing right now, to basically just, I'm watching a lot of YouTube videos as well on marketing and branding and such things like that. I think we'll take 2 more questions before we round up. Any more questions from anyone?
Yeah, so I've got a question. Hi, Emeka. Thank you so much for this presentation. My name is Chief Elinjoku. I'm an electrical engineer. My question is about burnout. So with making plans and like looking into the future, like you've discussed, how do you prevent burnout in this like situation? And also, how, it's probably an easy answer, but how do you go about celebrating like little or big career wins?
Yeah, great. Yeah, but burnout is one that is really important. Yeah, no, thank you for raising that question. It's always a challenge, when working at any company or any stage in your career, sacrificing, I guess it's making a good impression on the employers or the people around you against burning yourself out. And I would say that it's probably easier nowadays. Mental health is really important. It's, people talking about it so much more now, that people realize that you've got to take a break. In terms of what you're doing from a career perspective as well, I would say you would end up doing what you need to do. It's almost like that book I was saying about the art of the start. I remember actually writing a business case when I was starting like a small business, and I had an appointment with the bank at 9 a.m. On the morning, and at 4 a.m. I was finishing off the business case, and I probably had like 2 hours sleep and a hot shower, and then headed down to the bank. But from that perspective, it was okay. I did what I needed to get done at that point in time. But in terms of burning yourself out, you don't burn yourself out in terms of what you call like wasting your energy and kind of pushing against doors that are not going to be opened, or working in the wrong way, in the wrong direction. And this is why, again, it's important in looking at your career and having it planned out, so that you know that where you're putting extra effort in is actually going to reap rewards. Working 50-hour days, 50-hour weeks, it's not actually going to be beneficial unless you can actually see where that's helping you get to. If it's, I just want to clear the decks, or it's really important to me to get this thing right, and I'm putting the effort in because I want to, not because I'm being forced to. So yeah, it's important in terms of understanding your direction and where you're trying to get to ensure that you're putting efforts in the right place. And that should help prevent burnout. And also using the opportunities these days that people are talking about mental health more, not as an excuse, but an opportunity to get that respite that our brains and our bodies need to be able to ensure that we can carry on working. And then the second part of your question in terms of celebrating successes, again, social media is great. Advertise the successes. You pass a course, put it up on there. On LinkedIn, definitely celebrate the little things that you're doing. And also for yourself as well, just having an internal smile, when you've done something. I mean, yeah, it's on my bookshelf now at the moment, but just get that out for you. Yeah, there's my chartership certificate still there. I got that in 2010, and then from the APM, I have this one on my desk. So when I got chartered, I was one of the first people to get chartered with the APM, so that you got one of these. So it's a nice little paperweight. But again, I posted all that stuff on on my LinkedIn once I got it, and I even got like a well done from our CEO for the chartership one. So yeah, definitely celebrate successes as much as you can.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Any more questions? And just to add on what Emeka said, really, one thing I took on myself, especially for my mental health, is learning to use the word no more often. You know, growing up, I don't know, you're so. I remember reading in a book. It said that the combination of ambition and insecurity stops people from saying no. You know, we always want to just miss the delivery. I could deliver everything, and you've got to be selective, basically. You know, because at the end of the day, you draw the boundaries. You know, people don't know the boundary. You have to draw the boundary on what you allow and what you don't allow. So I think it's definitely, you know, important what you said that, you know, in order to move on, being selective, basically, in terms of stuff. I think we could squeeze in a last question before we round up. Any brief question?
Yeah.
All right, I've got one, Sam. Can you hear me, Sam?
Yeah, Jonathan.
Great stuff. All right, and you feel free to answer this after Emeka has a go. So Emeka, I just wanted to get your opinion, right? You probably, if you got chartered in 2010 when you left Brunel, probably was a lot earlier than that, right? So at that point of time as an engineer, like the only sort of route to carry on progression was pretty much chartership. Like you kind of had to. From university, it was like, you have to get chartered. That's the main aim of even coming out of university. Now, I suppose you've seen an evolution of like how the industry has been and how relevant is chartered now to the young engineer that is finishing his degree, that is coming out. There's so many non-traditional roles. You know, how do you make the decision? Because chartership has traditionally been a box-ticking exercise, and a lot of people who come out with a lot of ideas and want to do something different, it's almost a hindrance to fall into that. So what are both your views on how important is it for young engineers to be chartered?
Yeah, good question. And yeah, I slightly take offense to say it's the tick box exercise back. It wasn't at all.
I'm in the process of mine, so yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They're changing it slightly now that they've just so for the Institution of Civil Engineers, they've added sustainability now. So like one of the things that you have to demonstrate. So, but it's only recent. It's only this year, you know.
No, that's true. Like the APM has just added ethics to theirs as well, which is something that other institutions have had. Is like, you've got to be ethical in terms of the way you're doing things. But yeah, I think there's a couple of things from that. So one was something that my mum used to say to me when she used to see me playing around rather than studying. She always used to say to me, it was probably a Nigerian mum thing. She always said, just get your degree and put it under your armpit, then you can do anything. So that was always a thing for me. It's like, it's there for the taking, you know, why not do it? You know, why not do it? It proves your experience, your competency with, you know, a well-renowned institution. And something, secondly, is the one that the APM used to say to us, the IET used to say to us, which is the IEE back then. Shows how long ago it was. But they said to us, and we went to a couple of, because I was part of one of the younger members institution back then as well. And we'd had a couple of conferences with the IEE. And when they were talking about chartership and the different institutions, one of the issues that we have in the UK with the term engineer, for instance, you know, you get guys who, you know, come to do your broadband, will come in, they call themselves engineers. That really annoys me, because I always say, oh, so he's an engineer, okay? He's a technician with me. He's a technician, not an engineer. And from that perspective, the different institutions were saying that the government was saying, when it was come to anything to do with engineering, they didn't know who to talk to. So the IET and the IMechE were actually looking at joining together at one point. But you got some old guys who said never happened, because mechanicals versus electrical. And then they said to us that basically what the government was saying is, we need a chartered standard. And the whole Engineering Council chartered standard was about, if it's a doomsday scenario, and they always used say to us the World War III scenario, but I hate using that terminology, called it like, yeah, the doomsday scenario, end of the world scenario. and the government needs to solve a problem, an engineering problem, who would they go to?
The Avengers of engineering, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
how do you know that those people are at a certain standard and level that they can get involved in any electrical, mechanical, civil, structural, chemical engineering issues and deal with those? It's the chartered standard. So it's basically putting people to what we're calling a benchmark standard of competency within engineering and experience as well as knowledge. So that's why I would say, yeah, it's still very important.
Yeah, I think that's all we've got time for, to be honest. Literally, but just to round up on what you said, on my opinion of it.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the purpose of what you want for your life. Similar to the Avengers metaphor that I used earlier. You could be like Thanos connecting all the stones to be this ultimate, to align it with your purpose, basically. And even with me and doing my chartership, I'm trying to go for an MBA in a couple of years' time. It's just I want to be a person that changes the world. That's my vision. I would definitely encourage being chartered at the end of the day, because it shows a level of working competency. But I think you don't see as this. A lot of people see as this ultimate something to look forward to. I don't know. I read in a book called Atomic Habits saying don't set goals, sort of change your habits to align with what you're trying to get to. So, to me, it's a case of I don't look up to, like, once I get charged. And I get this image from a lot of people. It's like this ultimate thing that once I get it, I'm the king, basically. But it's one of those things that's, people that are ambitious know this. Like you said, there's still going to be more stuff to achieve in life. And that's the way I see it from my point of view. It's fantastic, but the show still goes on, basically.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
But now we've gone 2 minutes over time. Thanks very much for the presentation, and thanks for everyone for turning up as well. In terms of contacting Emeka's on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn myself. If you want to pop up questions or network, please feel free to add me. Plus, he boosts up my numbers on LinkedIn as well too. But yeah, well, thanks everyone. AFB, we've got a LinkedIn. You could follow us on AFBE and on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter as well for a couple of events that we got coming up in May. Just to plug this in, we've got an event, Ignorance versus Innocence. So if you do want to attend our roundtable event, please come through. But that'll be all from me. Thanks very much, Emeka, for presenting. Really good. Some of the slides were really something. I was writing some of the notes down because I find it quite relatable personally. Also, thanks for everyone for attending. It's been a good event. Look forward to the next event as well. Thanks, everyone.